Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Let me introduce ourselves. My name is Fathia and my partner is Afrin Septiana. Today we will present about wild and isolated children and the critical age issue for language learning. Wild and isolated children. Isolated children, or we could call it as a feral child, is a human child who has lived isolated from human contact from a very young age and has no or little experience of human care, loving or social behavior, and crucially of human language. Some feral children have been confined in isolation by other people, usually their own parents. There have been a number of report cases of children raised by wolves, dogs, pigs, sheep, and other animals. These children are known as wild or feral children. Also, there are cases of children who have been kept in confinement or isolation by their parents or others, and consequently were not exposed to language. Report case of wild and isolated children. For example, first is Victor, the wild boy of Afrin, and the second is Jenny, raised in isolation. Jenny raised in isolation. She was deprived not only of language input, but also of any sort of love or normal parental care. She most certainly had delayed and permanent problems with her language ability. She also had many other developmental delays. She lacked true grammar, but all these examples show us that full language development may require language input. It also possibly requires human interaction and nurturing, the development of other cognitive abilities, a healthy diet, and others. The next is Helen Keller, the renowned deaf and blind girl. So for this slide will be present by Ms. Afrin.
A critical age for first language learning. Why did Helen fully learn language while Victor and Jenny didn't? Without exposure to language, children will not acquire language. Children need some form of exposure, in the form of speech, signs, reading, or touch, before language learning can occur, and that exposure should be offered as early as possible in the child's life. Two major factors governing language learning. Number 1, the age at which exposure to language began. Number 2, the extent of any physical, psychological, and social trauma prior to exposure to language. A critical age for first language learning. The critical period hypothesis. The belief that the ability to learn language declines with increasing age. 1. Certain biological events related to language development can only happen in an early critical period. 2. Certain linguistic events must happen to the child during this period for development to proceed normally. And then the conclusion. Took the case of feral children such as Jenny, a girl that was isolated and tied up to a potty chair for over 10 years, and Victor of Irawan, a boy that lived in the wild for most of his childhood, we can see how the lack of language has affected their lives. It is important to note that all the children found it hard to integrate into society, and it's easy to understand why. There is a critical age in which human language and interactions are developed, and after that, it becomes much harder to develop these skills. In conclusion, we could emphasize the importance of language acquisition for a child's development. Usually, people take language as a biological feature that humans have and take it for granted. However, by those examples, no one can see that lack of language can not only affect in child on a short-term basis but also during his whole life. That's our presentation. Thank you for the attention and thank you.
Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.